the topic I wanted to talk about today is autonomy in the workplace. I don't think I'm getting any more out of this. And autonomy, I mean basically being trusted to run things in an appropriate way without being micromanaged. Just having kind of general set procedures of how to properly do things, but within those parameters, letting the employees kind of improvise and make things work as best as they see fit. And I've had a lot of different experiences with this at different workplaces. I've been working just my whole adult life. I mean, I think my first job was, I didn't work in high school, but it was right after summer after high school and onward. So it's been 14 years now of work at a variety of different workplaces. And I have had a variety of different levels of autonomy at work. And of course that depends a lot on the type of job it is. Some things have to be more regulated, some things are a lot more free-flowing. My very first job was teaching at a high school marching band. And I was basically a high schooler. I had just graduated, so I'm roughly the same age as the people I'm teaching. So it would have been understandable if things had been a little bit more regulated, like they had, the band directors and the staff had kind of wanted more specific things from me, but I actually had like a whole lot of autonomy at that first job, which was great to a degree. It was nice just to be trusted. I'm just the parameters were basically, here's the rehearsal, here's the day, here's the rehearsal times. You come in and we have 3 or 4 blocks of rehearsals, and you're just on your own for maybe two of them. Here's the music that we are working on. We're trying to, the rest of the band is trying to learn up to this part of their show they're working on. And so just try and work up to this point. That would be maybe, if I even had that much, and I often didn't, those would be kind of the very broad instructions we were working on. And aside from that, just these kind of basic goals, which weren't even very strict. It was really just up to me how I wanted to run rehearsal. And it was nice because I had a lot of ideas of how I wanted things to be run. I had a lot of experience as a student myself and coming right off of just being in school of how I liked rehearsals run, how I liked what I thought was helpful in a teacher, things I didn't like, things I would have changed about my own experience. So I had a lot to go on, and I didn't have too much of a problem structuring things like that. But I did struggle a little bit, especially just being so new to the job and being so close in age to the students I was teaching. That a little bit more help, I think, would have been nice. And in a situation like that, there's really only so much they could do. They hired me to lead this section of the band. And everybody else working there, of course, had all of their other duties. There weren't people to spare to be, watching over the other teachers and making sure things are going a certain way. And so, I did have a decent amount of insecurity about the job and could have used a little bit more guidance. But of course, they hire one person to do the job. They don't hire one person to do it and another person more experienced to watch over them, because then they'd just be paying twice as much for one job. So totally get that that's not really a viable option in that type of workplace. And I've had various teaching jobs. Usually those I have a high degree of autonomy in. I've had a lot of service jobs that some have had very little autonomy, and I did not like those at all. One job, just another coffee shop job that I've had several of at this point. It was a bigger place. It was like coffee. They had a whole kitchen and a bakery department. So a lot of people worked there. A lot of people worked at one time. I had anywhere from 3 to 6 people in the front where I worked, and there would be another 2 or 3 in the kitchen and maybe 3 more in the bakery department. So it was a decent amount of staff all working at the same time, and there was much less autonomy there. In that place in particular, there was a lot more strict regulations, and it was helpful to have more people there and have a little bit more of a structure in some ways, just because there was more people to lean on to ask questions about, how do I do this thing? What's the proper way to do this, or how do you do this? All that kind of stuff. So that is helpful to have that type of structure, but there was so much micromanaging by this isn't anything about the staff there. I had a good time working with all my coworkers there. This is just ownership, kind of top down. The owner, unlike some places where the owner knows the business and also works there, this owner did not. He wouldn't know what to do if he had to actually work there. It was a purely an ownership type of situation. So he didn't know how the job worked, but there was still just a bunch of strict regulations on things, and he would just show up. And things to be running smoothly. He would show up, he would go to the office, he would turn on, we had what we were told were security cameras that were installed at one point while I worked there, but he would just go into the office, 10 feet away from where we were working, turn on the camera feed and just watch us. And if we ever had a moment of downtime, which didn't happen that often, it was a pretty busy place, but if there ever was, he would just come out and say, "Oh, look over here in this corner that no one ever uses, there's a little bit of dust on the ground," or something like that. Just these really minute type micromanaging things that didn't help anybody, and it was usually just stuff that was going to get cleaned at the end of the day anyway, or it was stuff that we were already aware of. It was just kind of this pointless coming out and saying, "Hey, stop taking a moment to breathe. You're here to work. I'm paying you minimum wage, so you need to just be like hustling the whole time you're here." It was just that type of attitude, which, of course, and I'm sure many people have had jobs like that. That stuff only gets in the way. Nobody was trusted to keep things running. Even though, of course, we all did. The business would have fallen apart without the employees there because the owner never did anything. He couldn't have done the job. But the people that kept it running every day and running smoothly too were not trusted to do what they were doing every day. So if we were ever seen not, just standing still for one moment after a big rush or something, we were seen as we're not doing a good enough job and we need to be told something to do because we have a moment of downtime. And that stuff really just gets in the way. It just slowed everything down. It really lowered morale. Nobody likes that, of course. So that just made everybody in the workplace unhappy, made things just move slower. Everybody was just in a worse mood when that kind of stuff was happening. And just a really poor way to run things. That was a couple of jobs ago. I guess that was 4 jobs ago. So I've had 5 jobs ago. So I've had four jobs since then. All a varying degree of micromanaging or not. The job I had right after that, there was a lot more leeway, but started off fine, and then my manager got a little crazy, and the micromanaging started, but it was always a very unhelpful degree of it. It wasn't anything that actually helped run the business better. It was just stuff like, even though for 6 months of working here, I didn't care if you had some downtime when it wasn't busy, but for some reason now I care about this, so you have to appear to be working even if you're not doing anything. So it would just be stuff like this was another coffee shop job, so it would just be stuff like go overstock all this giant stack of cups that's already completely full. There's nothing else to be done here. This is as full as it could be, but you're not doing anything, so go stock that more to stack them even higher to a point where they could just fall over and make a big mess and ruin all these cups that have fallen on the floor now. Just a lot of versions of that, or go overstock this fridge that's already completely full, but you're not doing anything, so go move something from a back fridge into the front fridge that doesn't have enough room for anything else that's already full, and now it's just too full, and there's too much milk in there, and it's in the way, and now it's making it harder to quickly pull things out when we need to make drinks and stuff like that. So yeah, just that was a workplace that I actually had a high degree of autonomy in, and that was what I really liked about it. I came off this micromanaging job, came into this job where we were trusted to keep things running, and then all of a sudden, without warning, that just kind of stopped, and we had to appear busy for no helpful reason. It wasn't even stuff like, go clean this spot that doesn't get cleaned very much. That would be maybe a little annoying, but at least it would be some type of progress. Something would get cleaned, but it was just stuff like, hey, overstock this thing that's already completely stocked. That was completely unhelpful, and again, just kind of lowered morale, made people stressed out, made me feel like if there was ever a moment that I wasn't immediately doing something, that I was gonna get in trouble at work, which is a really shitty way to feel. I'm an adult, I'm working at a job to survive and support myself. I don't need to feel like I'm a little kid whose parent I'm in an unstable home, and I don't know if my parent is gonna be mad about something or not, so I'm just kind of walking on eggshells around them. Since that job, let's see, I had three other jobs after that. One of them was extremely micromanagey again. I hated that job. Maybe I can make another video, because there's a lot to talk about with that job. So that might be a whole video's worth, but I did not stay there long. Made me extremely unhappy with how things are run there. After that, my current job and my previous job, I had a high degree of autonomy there. And part of that was because I worked mostly by myself. It was just a solo shift coffee job. So, you know, if somebody's working by themselves, they have to be trusted to run things, because there's nobody there to see that they're not doing it. So, you know, we go in and you start a job, you work with people, training for a little bit, you see how things are run. And they say, hey, are you good with everything? Are you comfortable working on your own? And I say, yes, I'm fine. I'll call you if I have a question with something. Which, you know, sometimes something unexpected would come up and I would have to call somebody. But for the most part, you know, I and everyone else that works there was just trusted to do a normal, good job. And we had the way things are run to do. And of course, at any job, lots of unexpected things pop up all the time. That there's not, to have a direct procedure in place for every single thing would be impossible, because unexpected things happen all the time. So, you know, we were all trusted just to run things as best we could. And, you know, just improvise, do your best when this stuff pops up, and just kind of keep things running smoothly. And I really valued that at that last job, my current job. I think I might have talked about my last job in some previous videos, and I definitely had several issues with that, but it wasn't with the way the things were run. I really appreciated just being hired and trusted to do something. I think that makes the most sense from an employee perspective, of course, as from my own perspective, and also from an owner's perspective, because why would you want to hire somebody that you didn't trust to do the job that you're paying them for? If you didn't think that they were going to do a good job, you should have either not hired them in the first place, or hired them and made sure they got enough training to your satisfaction as the owner that they were going to run things the way that you wanted. But why would you hire them, provide them with this basic level of training, and then be upset that things aren't going as you wanted? That just feels stupid. If you're the owner of something, you want to, ideally, you want to be making money without working so much. If you wanted to just work all the time, you would just get hired at a job. If you're the owner of something, you want to be making money, making enough money that you're making money, you have enough to pay people to keep the business running for you. And the easiest possible way for that to happen is you just hire people and trust them to do the job, and give them enough training to your satisfaction that they're gonna do the job well. That just seems really obvious to me. You know, if you're hiring somebody and then you just show up to work all the time, you're not doing a job. You're not doing the job. You're just showing up and telling people they're not doing a good job and then leaving. Why would anybody want to do that? If I was the owner of something, I would much rather just go home and make money and not be there. Or if I was there, be doing something that actively contributes to the flow of the workplace. It just feels like a stupid way to run things. It makes me really appreciate the jobs my current job and my previous job, that I've been trusted to just run things normally. And that was a big selling point with this job I have now that I applied for. It was a very lax kind of hiring process. I applied for it, I came in. I didn't even come in first. I talked to my boss on the phone. And I'd sent them my resume and said, hey, here's the stuff I've done. Worked at these types of places. I'm interested in this place. I think you have a cool job. I'd like to work there. Let me know if you want me to come talk to you about it. And so I just had like kind of a phone interview. It really wasn't an interview. My boss just called and it's like, hey, you look like you've got experience. Let me tell you about the job. Here's the deal. Does that sound good to you? And I was like, yeah. And they didn't really ask me anything. It really wasn't much of an interview. It was just kind of them telling me about the job. And they're like, are you comfortable with this type of stuff? And I said, yeah. And then they said, can you come in some other time in person just so I can like meet you and we'll talk and figure out like a schedule and stuff like that. So I did that. I came in and we kind of just continued the conversation. It was still, I guess, like technically an interview. I wasn't hired yet, but they just told me a little bit more about the job, and really the only thing they were asking me was like, here's how things are run. I trust people just to do a normal job. I want people to have a life outside of work, just be able to like come in, learn the basic way things are run, just be comfortable working on your own, do a good job. Just you don't have to be like super good at this job. Just come in, be a normal person, be nice to customers, and that's like the only requirements, basically. And this is what one of the first things I heard from my current boss. They just said, come in. Things don't have to be perfect. If you're having a bad day and you're overwhelmed, you don't have to do a perfect job. If you miss a spot cleaning, or things are left a little bit chaotically, or things aren't at an optimal level that you would normally be able to keep up with because whatever, just a day, you had a day and things weren't super optimal. They said that was fine. Of course that happens to everybody, obviously. Just come in, just do a decent, do the best job you can. If things aren't perfect, it doesn't matter. Just kind of be a normal person and come in, keep things running smoothly. So I was like, wow, this is the best interview I've ever had. They just came, they didn't ask me any weird questions or really any questions. They didn't, I didn't have to come in and they said, hey, tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult customer and how you dealt with that, or any of those questions that I feel like I have to have a prepared answer for. It was really just, can you be normal? Can you just be be normal and do this job okay? I was like, yep, I can do that. And that's awesome that those are the expectations that I know going in. So I really appreciate that. I think the bosses like that I've had are all people that have worked in the industry before. They know how it is. They kind of worked their way up. They were in my position for years, so worked their way up. They now own a business, and they just know how it is. And the people that want to micromanage everything and not give their staff any autonomy are the people that have just inherited a business. They've And I've literally had bosses like this that they have never worked a day in their life. They just inherited a business and they just show up and micromanage and screw things up for a while. Then they go home and, you know, call it a day's work. That's been my experience, at least. I'm sure there's plenty of people that have worked in the industry and they're still bad at managing things, or people that have inherited a business just because that's been their circumstances. They kind of lucked into a position like that, but they still want to do right by their employees and kind of learn how everything's run. You know, they're learning the business just as much as anybody that they hire. And you know, they want to do a good job just as much as they want their employees to. And you know, they welcome feedback. They ask their employees how things are going. You know, what do they need help with? What could they, as the owner, help out with more? You know, just all that type of stuff. So, you know, there's no black and white for your background and your ownership management style, but that's just been the trends that I've seen in my, you know, relatively limited working experience.